why Alejandro Garnacho reminds me of this winger from the early 2010s and it's not Cristiano Ronaldo, what we can learn from Neymar's spell at Santos and how it can be applied to Garnacho, and what is Garnacho's likely development path without unnecessarily overhyping him as many young players are. All of that will be coming up in this video. So after making his debut, scoring in the Europa League and impressing against Aston Villa in the League Cup, and scoring the winner against Fulham at Craven Cottage, Alejandro Garnacho has now firmly cemented his name as Manchester United's new top young prospect and now looks set to at least compete for a starting spot week in week out when the Premier League does return. Garnacho is still only just 18 and only just started playing senior football after starting last season for United's under-23s and the under-18s, but he plays with the confidence of a player who's been playing senior football for a few years now, and that's always a fantastic sign as it shows a player is not going to be overwhelmed by the transition from youth football to senior football. He has a slim build, he's around 5'9", 5'10 maybe, but like Ronaldo back in 2003 to around 2005, Garnacho seems to have a natural stature about him, still being able to hold his own and not necessarily being bullied that easily, and being able to drive at players who engage in the physical battle. He's an excellent dribbler, having the intricacy to shift the ball quickly in tight areas, whilst also having the acceleration to burst past defenders. But what really impresses me is his willingness to be direct and run at his fullback, as I think that's something that United are currently lacking on the flank, with both Antony and Sancho being rather hesitant to take on their fullback at speed so far this season, as they instead prefer to play backwards in order to keep the play circulating, which is necessary sometimes, but at points you need a winger like Garnacho who can receive the ball, drive and commit the opposition defenders. Garnacho is a player who's very similar to Napoli's Kvaratskhelia, who I did actually make a video on a few weeks ago, so I'll leave that linked in the description below. Like the Georgian, Garnacho has fantastic ball carrying ability, and I think he perfectly suits what Ten Hag wants in a winger, a player who can receive the ball to feet and have the ability to take on players and also make those runs in behind his fullback into goal scoring positions and then finish those opportunities, as Garnacho did against Real Sociedad and against Fulham in the Premier League. But also Ten Hag's wide attackers need to have good decision making, knowing when to burst forward with the ball and when to play a pass to release the ball to then make a run into space. Garnacho does of course need to refine his decision making and just overall sharpen every part of his game, which will happen as he moves into his early 20s. So certainly at the moment I think you'd have to consider the Argentine not just one of Manchester United's best prospects, but one of the best young prospects in Europe. In terms of players who have stylistic similarities to Alejandro Garnacho, there are many. The obvious comparisons to a young Cristiano Ronaldo are there, with both being exotic young wingers with skill, flair and pace to burn, who have burst onto the scene at Old Trafford at the tender age of 18. And I think you'd have to say that a young Cristiano Ronaldo and Garnacho do have a similar profile, and if Garnacho can have the sort of development that Ronaldo had from 18 to 21, which was around 2003 to 2006, then you'd have to say that that would be the ideal development path. Obviously doing what Ronaldo did from 2007 onwards is pretty unrealistic expectations to set for anyone, but that 2006-2007 Ronaldo is a player that I could see Garnacho becoming. I think this season when the Premier League does return after the World Cup, Garnacho needs to fundamentally first of all start getting game time in the Premier League, which he already is, but it does need to come on a consistent basis, which it seems like he will get under Ten Hag, but I wouldn't expect him to fully nail down a starting spot, with Rashford and Sancho providing strong competition. But I think next season we could see Garnacho adding consistent output to his game, as Ronaldo did over 2004 and 2005, and like Ronaldo did in 2006, I think Garnacho around maybe 2024, when he'll be around 20, can then push on and start hitting double figures for both goals and assists in the Premier League, as I think that is a true test of young talented wingers. Can they add substance to their style? It looks fantastic in highlights reels to be dribbling past players on the flank and using fancy footwork which yields cheers from the crowd, but in order to become a top level winger in the modern game, you need goals and assists, or to at least be a major contributor to your side's attacking output. I think whilst a bit further along in his development, Neymar from around 2009 to 2013 is a great case study for Garnacho. Neymar at Santos was a definition of a wonder kid, and throughout his Santos career, from when he made his debut at 17 in 2009 to then scoring 14 goals in 48 games during his first full season, and then going on to score 42, 24, 43 and 13 goals respectively in the next 4 seasons, leaving midway through the 2013 season to join Barcelona for a fee in the region of 57 million euros. Neymar at Santos was already looking like he had the potential to be one of the best technical players the game had ever seen. When he first emerged at the end of the 2000s, being a winger who would attempt and pull off FIFA Street-like skills, whether this was a Rabona pass or shot, intricate silky dribbling, drifting through players as though he had Velcro on his boots and the ball was stuck to it. And Neymar at 17-18 had many similarities to Garnacho, and I do think that because Neymar stayed in South America, probably for around 2 years longer than he probably could have, meant that he was able to develop a lot more than he would have if he had gone to a top side in Europe earlier on, in my opinion. At Santos, he was the main man, competing at the elite level in South America and already starting to become a key player for Brazil, and that is slightly different to Garnacho, as he, like Ronaldo, is starting off at the very top, and this can be a blessing as much as it can be a curse. But this curse can often be seen as a positive at first. It's the overhype that comes with a youngster's first few good early performances which Garnacho has experienced. Now this isn't to minimise Garnacho's performances, as for an 18-year-old coming into the first team in Manchester United, he is producing a lot more than you would expect, especially in comparison to other senior players like Jadon Sancho and Donny van der Beek, who would love to have the impact that Garnacho is having. However, the United fans, the media, Ten Hag and Garnacho himself do maybe need to control the hype to a degree, which is what I think Bruno Fernandes was trying to do. Despite most people seeing what he said as unwarranted criticism, I think what Fernandes was saying is that yes, he's a talented young player with huge potential, but he still needs to improve and maybe iron out some parts of his game and mentality. Yes, he was very good against Aston Villa, Fulham and Real Sociedad, but this is Manchester United and that's what should be expected. And he can't get complacent because whilst for an 18-year-old his performances are hugely impressive, in order to become a Manchester United regular, those performances should be standard and not seen as something out of the ordinary. Garnacho clearly has the talent and the drive to improve, but it's also important that if he goes for a bad spell like Jadon Sancho is now, that the overhype doesn't turn into overcriticism. I always think it's better to not buy into the massive hype, but then to not flood to criticise when a young player's performances aren't at that level for a period of time. But nevertheless, I don't think that the most conservative, hard to please football pundit would say that Garnacho is not one of the most exciting young players in Europe. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube and TikTok refer to Garnacho as talented but raw, and I would agree with this statement, meaning that whilst his ability is obviously there, he does need to refine his game still, learning how to use his abilities in the most efficient way possible. This is natural amongst young players, particularly young wingers, who have the flair, dribbling and confidence to cause most fullbacks issues, but it's their decision making that lets them down at certain points. And by watching Garnacho over the last few games, I would say that this definitely applies to him, though I also think Antony falls into this category as well. And so once you look at it like that, Garnacho seems even more impressive. The thing that actually impressed me significantly about Garnacho's game, and something I hope Antony can introduce into his, is that directness that Garnacho has to drive at his fullback. As I said earlier on with Antony and certainly Sancho, but also Rashford as well, I often find myself somewhat frustrated when they receive the ball in the flank in 1v1 situations, and rather than looking to take on the defender, they instead slow the tempo down and look for supporting passing options. Whilst there does need to be a balance, and Garnacho probably does need to know when to play quick and keep the ball moving rather than trying to beat his man in all situations, I would still much prefer to see Garnacho have the confidence and the decisiveness that he has to attempt to take on those players, rather than always looking for support. And this shows that he does have the ability to dribble past players, and that if Ten Hag can develop the young Argentine's decision making, then his overall effectiveness in the final third is going to resemble that of a top level winger. And so I think this does give Garnacho a real opportunity to establish himself as United's starting winger, as he offers something that Ten Hag's other options aren't offering to the same degree at the moment. So we know how good Garnacho is and how good he can be, but what are the specific elements that he can start to add to his game? Well, if we look back at Neymar as a case study, we see that he was able to channel his flair and dribbling to maximum efficiency. The reason I think Neymar was able to distance himself from players like Hatem Ben Arfa, Adel Taarabt, and a number of other players that I would refer to as street players, which is just a term I've made up for players who have a unique skill set perfectly suited to entertainment. And this was because he was able to prioritise his end product. Yes, dribbling and ball carrying is important for a winger, enabling them to progress the ball forward for their side, but at the end of the day, goal contributions are the be all and end all, and Garnacho is a player that seems to have already recognised this, and a great example to me was his assist for Bruno Fernandes' goal against Aston Villa in the League Cup. Now, whilst his second assist for McTominay's goal was obviously a lot more impressive, creating a chance from a position that he really had no right to create from, I think his first assist where he intercepts a pass from the keeper and first time plays a pass into Bruno Fernandes' path shows that Garnacho isn't going to be one of these players who feels that he needs to do something spectacular every time he receives the ball, as I feel that most young players, including Ronaldo when he was younger and he first came to United, fall into the trap of doing, and something that I think Anthony, Rashford and even Sancho can all be guilty of at times. If Garnacho takes a touch in this situation, then the Villa defenders can squeeze across and close off the space for Fernandes, and potentially the chance doesn't get created. However, Garnacho shows he has the footballing IQ to know that he doesn't need to do anything fancy, and this results in a goal for Fernandes and an assist for Garnacho, and this is the type of maturity that will allow Garnacho to sustain and push on from his current good form, and this is a reason amongst many why I'm so confident that Garnacho isn't just another Adnan Januzaj. Januzaj burst onto the scene in not an identical fashion to Garnacho, but it was very similar. However, it became obvious after Januzaj had left United that maybe he didn't have the mentality to match his ability. I think Garnacho definitely has shades of a young Ronaldo, but stylistically I also think he's similar to Frank Ribery and could be a good template for him to develop from. A player who not only has the dribbling and flair of a winger, but also the intricate ball control in tight areas, the short passing interplay, and the composure around the box for number 10. And I think developing these attributes is what will rapidly progress Garnacho's development, and to be fair to him, the goal he scored against Fulham had the interplay and composure as he played that slick 1-2 with Eriksen and then finished beyond Leno. So overall, Garnacho is a player that definitely has world-class potential, although he's nowhere near that level at the moment, and I do think expectations do have to be tempered slightly, and players like Neymar and Januzaj, both the good and the bad, are good case studies to learn from. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that video, check out some of my others which will be linked in the description. Give the video a like, subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you get notified when my videos come out. Put your thoughts in the comments section below and follow me on Instagram and Twitter for more content as well.